All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Laser Brains, the podcast that reviews every sci-fi, fantasy, and other genre film ever made.
Yeah, whatever we want.
Whatever we want, really. I'm your co-host, Michael, and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be taking a look at Akira, which is one of the best anime films.
Film for many a thing. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But we're, as always, joined by co-owner of Meteor, Champ Ian.
What is going on?
Woo! Thank you, audience member. Yes.
Thanks for having me.
And guess what? We have is this the first time on? No, it's the second time on Laser Brains.
Time.
Who was our first guest on Laser Brains? On
some asshole named Nick.
Oh yeah, returning Nick. Thank you for joining us, Nick.
Yes, thanks again for having me. This is my penance for saying that Phantom Menace came out in '93, the last time I was
what
on.
An asshole.
I know, yeah. I know. Can you imagine what I have on these guys to get me back on?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so here's the thing. There's a lot to talk about with this movie, but before we talk about the actual movie itself, let's give a brief description of our first experience with it. I'll go first, since I saw it first, I think, chronologically.
Okay, Mike.
About grade 9 for me, which was 91. Some friends of mine lent me a VHS tape, a copy, and they said, you got to watch this anime. I'm like, what is anime? I put this sucker in by myself. I'm like, I'm just going to watch it just to appease them. I put it in, and I watched the first 5 seconds, and then Neo Tokyo exploded, and I hit stop. And I said, I can't waste this on just me. So I have to call all my buddies over, and we all got together and we watched Akira, and it blew our minds, okay? And then I watched it over and over and over again. But I have to point out, this was the original English dub, so it was a completely different experience. And it was to the point of I've almost got the movie visually memorized. That's all I'm going to say. I love this movie. Josh, let's talk about your first experience with it.
So my first experience, I went to college for animation. And I never really loved anime. Even in high school, wasn't a huge fan of it. I also had like a preconceived notion of it. Like the only thing I'd really kind of come in contact with anime-wise was like Pokemon or Dragon Ball, and it wasn't my thing.
Kid stuff.
Yeah, it just wasn't my thing.
Hey. So Pokemon is not kid stuff.
That's what I hear.
I felt like it just wasn't for me, and I had this kind of like idea in my head of what anime was, and then when I got to college, my classmates asked me what anime that I liked, and I was like, none really. Like Pokemon's fine or whatever, I don't know. And then they made me sit down and watch this movie, and it changed everything for me. Like it opened my eyes to what animation could be. It's
into what the universe can be.
Yeah, exactly. But it's true though. Like in Japan, it is a totally different thing. In North America, it feels almost like a genre animation because it's kind of secluded to this like kids, like teenager and younger. Right. That's kind of the stigma that animation has. And in Japan, it's just a medium to tell a story. It doesn't matter what the story is. If it's best served in animation, they're going to tell it in animation. Are you saying that
grown-ups watch animation?
Yeah.
In Japan?
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Interesting.
Can I also point out there's only 5 gun deaths per year in Japan? Is there a connection? Who knows? Another episode. We'll talk later. Okay, Ian, what's your first experience with this movie?
I've watched a little bit of anime.
Okay.
In my life, mostly things like Pokemon. Miyazaki films. I've watched a little Tokyo Ghoul here and there. I've watched a little Death Note here and there. My first exposure to Akira would have been at this bar called Meteor with a handful of
July 17th,
right around then. Yeah, my very first time.
Wow.
To the point that I had to get a copy of it for this screening.
Right.
You could have called me.
You never answer when I call.
Okay, I think Nick wants to talk. Nick, you tell us, what's your experience with this film?
Well, first I'd like to extend my condolences to the three of you because, I watched it for the first time as God intended. On grade 12, first year university, in my room, in the afternoon, on a laptop. And I remember like very vivid, legally on a legal copy.
So it wasn't that Crunchyroll?
No, it wasn't, or whatever the kids call it nowadays. So I remember putting it on a laptop because, again, I at the time had not watched very much anime. So it was still something that it just never grabbed me as a kid. I didn't even really watch like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh that much when I was young. So I had just heard this as a kind of a genre defining movie. I thought, okay, if I'm going to start getting into it, maybe this is a good start.
Sure.
And even watching it on this like crappy Asus display, I'm sitting there and watching mouth agape
Yes,
at what's going on in front of me.
Yes.
So for me tonight, as much as this is far from my first time watching it, I own it on a special edition and all that, but watching it on a big screen with a real honest to goodness sound system made for a movie like this, it felt like watching it for the first time.
Right.
I was as blown, obviously hard act to follow with how I was introduced to it,
Sure,
of course,
sure.
but it was it's really special to watch this on a display and a system that is meant for something of this scale.
Well, for me, I watched it so many times as a kid that I had the visuals like memorized, as we were talking about earlier. Like, especially the first half hour with the motorcycles and everything, and then towards the end with his arm, growing organically and exploding into all this like body horror, which I loved. But the thing is when this movie opened, like tonight, I remember thinking like the music. I'm like, what the hell? What? Is this 2000? This was made in 1988. Are you kidding me? And then the giant logo, Akira. It felt like it was made today, and the reason is because it's influenced so many other films, cartoons, and other media that. This is like someone said in the audience, this is the film. Like, this is where a lot of this started. And it's been said that this is one of the most influential science fiction films ever made. And watching it tonight, I can't disagree with that. What do you think, Josh?
No, for sure. It down to the themes, the visuals, even the gags like that have come out of this movie with like the bike slide.
Oh,
like
yeah. Imitated
it's
100 times.
It's very influential and has shaped. It's changed animation for sure. Like, and not only animation but film. Yeah. And I feel like that doesn't happen very often. Like there's certain movies that come out that kind of change how we look at things, and I feel like this has got to be one of them. Like, it just changes cinema forever.
Well, the thing is Ian, this is your first time seeing it.
First time.
To your virgin eyes, how did you see this film tonight?
I have not been this locked in for something in a while, for a couple of reasons. Not all of them good reasons, most of them good reasons.
Okay.
The artwork is transcendent.
Yeah.
It is just something else. It is just something else. They did such an incredible job of creating atmosphere in this dystopian new Tokyo.
Sure.
And little details just blew my mind a little bit right from the very beginning as we're watching these motorcycle gangs zipping around, and you're seeing how they're animating the physics of a bike as he's accelerating a little bit too fast, and he's sort of zigzagging a bit, but you're getting a bit of a sort of like a Tron aesthetic as well.
Yes.
With the trails of the taillights that are following the meandering path of these bikes and then slowly fading out as time goes by. Wow. This is just, you could see how much effort went into this and how much pure artistry is in the visuals.
Well, we should say that those light trails only exist in photos that have been
long exposure.
Right. And then they just use that, but it's like, who cares? It looks amazing.
Right.
It looks amazing. And you talked about like, there's parts in the movie where the motorcycles are driving and different pieces are moving at different rates and different. It's amazing. And then there's Sorry, what were you gonna say, Nick?
I was going to say, I'm so glad that Ian brought up how there's those little almost gags or small details that pop up. Even I was noticing one that I had never seen before is one of the scenes where Kei and Kaneda are in like a sewer shaft. I completely forgot about the gag where they look over and you have a rat bubble up to the surface and maggots crawling in the stomach.
Yes.
And that was something that, one thing that
It's only for a half a second.
Right. And that is one of those many moments that I noticed, especially this viewing, where I was kind of like, I was people watching a bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
And just one of the many visceral reactions people had, hands clasped over the mouth. Like when someone was, at the very beginning of the opening chase scene where someone's arm is ran over by a bike. And you can feel it through the screen and the sound design. The amount of meticulous detail that was put into this is just unrivaled.
Those moments too feel like they ramp up as the movie goes, and then the climax of this movie with this grotesque monster baby thing, it is these kind of like small moments that just kind of like chip away at you, and then it's all blown away by the ending. It's so well thought out, and there's so much thought has been put into this for sure.
And the thing is I mean, thankfully here at Meteor, we've watched the Mad Max films. And so I felt a little bit of Mad Max vibe with that scene with riding over the arm. And there's a part where a guy falls off the motorcycle and he's rolling in slow motion. That reminded me of Mad Max.
Of course, there was also a bit where the motorcycle gang are throwing these little explosive things, which reminded me it was at Captain America.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The little Christmas balls.
Hey, the Captain America influence that we see everywhere. But it's like this movie combined like Blade Runner and a little bit of Mad Max and a little bit of everything and just made this new thing. And I just feel like Neo Tokyo feels like this expansive giant city, and like when they're up on like when they're on the escalators and when they're up on the top of the tower and they're just hanging out, it just feels like, what the hell am I in here? Where am I? It's like, right?
Yeah, the amount of mood setting that's in this movie, even in those quieter moments, even if it's just the colonel and the scientist talking, just the ambient noises of them being in that laboratory, just, it's all coming down to not just the animation, but again, I think something I appreciate a lot more this time, again, with Dolby Atmos sound, is the sound design.
Yes.
And how much these little sound effects, even if they're just in the background as dialogue's occurring, just help set the mood so much, and it's essential through the whole movie. And you don't even let it go beyond your subconscious until you really start being in a new environment where that's really being broadcast all the way. Like when the toys are coming to life.
Oh,
right.
Forget it. I can't even talk right now.
I know, yeah. I had never noticed the way that it was mixed. That my friends that were here with me saw me, who's seen this. I've seen this movie like 5-6 times at least.
I
turned.
I know.
I'm like, what the fuck? And that's $1 million moment. I can't imagine like in a full theater, like seeing this the first time, experiencing that as well too.
And the music, that's the thing, is I'm glad it's not, American pop. It's like, no, it's this weird genre of like, I looked it up somewhere. It's like a specific like area of pop. It's not even Japanese. It's like Indonesian or something.
Correct.
And I'm like, what the hell? When those toys come to life, I was like scared, but it worked. It was so perfect. I don't want it to be anything else, right? Like it was beautiful. Oh fuck. Anyway, so okay, sound design is great. Visuals are great. Okay, this story, I've seen this movie like you 10 times, maybe more. This is the first time where I went, now I think I know what the story is. Maybe, but it's very complex, very complicated.
I think it's interesting that this is the first time you're kind of getting the story, and this is the first time you've seen it in the original Japanese dialogue as well.
That's true. Yeah, that's the thing, is that, there's kind of like a film snobbish sort of attitude about like, you got to watch it with subtitles. But let's be clear. There is like a difference. Like when you're watching a film and reading subtitles, it's actually like reading a comic book or a manga. You're using two different parts of your brain at the same time. It does take extra effort. So I'm used to the original English dub, and that English dub is glorious. It's got so many classic moments. If you get a chance, go back and watch it. It's great. I've never seen the second American dub. Have you seen it?
No, I don't think I've actually, and then it's going to sound, I don't think I've actually seen any of the two dubs. I will say that my experience with dubs is colored by being a little kid and renting Godzilla 2000. With the if anyone's seen it, they know the best line in cinema history. This'll go through Godzilla like crap through a goose.
Jesus Christ.
So now the good thing is on my copy, I believe both dubs are included in the edition that I have. So maybe that'll be my homework to do that. So my first exposure has been through the sub environment.
I'm gonna say, you said, I don't think it's snobbish at all. Personally, I don't think there's any sort of elitism there.
Okay.
To want to watch the movie
And the
in its original
language.
form.
I agree,
That's the way that it was released. Other people, I'm sure they did a great job with these dubs, but that's not the original movie.
Now, Ian, now to really stay true to watching to the original form, maybe we shouldn't have put subtitles on after all.
Maybe we should learn Japanese and then rewatch the film.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Well, it almost started out that way. I had to
That's true.
beeline to the back to turn the subtitles on.
So, okay, here's the thing. I'm watching this movie. Let's just put it in context. 1988, the year before Batman, which was another influential film. I didn't see it until a couple years later, but it kind of snuck into the North American market as like a cult film. And according to what I've read, this really introduced Western audiences to anime. Now, granted, there was anime in America already. There was Speed Boy, and then there was
Speed Racer.
Speed Racer.
Right.
Speed Boy.
Oh, maybe Speed Racer and Astro Boy.
Astro Boy, Astro Boy, Speed Racer, Astro Boy. Then there was anime that was dubbed for American audiences to sell toys, like Voltron, right? Robotech, right? That's technically anime, but this was like the first authentic, like, not just for fun. And I think it busted the doors open. And this is like hard to imagine, but imagine if we were to do a Back to the Future movie and travel back to 1988 in Canadian and American high schools, nobody knew what the hell manga was or anime was, right? It was this tiny little niche audience. So me seeing this in 1990, 91, I was like, my mind was blown, and it was like, I didn't even know this thing existed. And it was so like, it was like a jealous god. Like, there could be no other anime before me. It was so everything, like the visuals, like destroy Tokyo, and that's in the future. And it was just like it blew my mind. It blew my mind. And again, the fact that it was in 1988 makes it even that much more like mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think?
No, it's there's not much that even today still kind of stands up to this movie.
Right.
Even with the visuals and the animation style and just how, like, I feel like when people think of anime, they kind of picture something in their mind.
Yeah.
Like, usually it's like a still image. We have like a couple of frames of like mouth movement for a lot of shots. I feel like the characters never sat still the entire film. Like, they're always moving. There's so much, like, there's just so much thought put into what the characters are doing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Like, it feels way deeper.
Exactly. Like, I even noticed,
Yeah.
like, when I was a kid, when I think it's Kaneda and the girl Kai are riding the bike, and then she gets off and she's like, "Oh, my butt hurts." Like, just to add that little detail of like, this is what it would be like if they were real, and this is how they would feel and react, right? Like, those little details are great.
Right. And I think what really helped, honestly, besides even the visuals, set this apart, even though, again, I was brought into the world at a time where now this was a bit more mainstream. Like, you could see anime on Saturday mornings.
Right.
I remember that. I think, honestly, besides even the animation, the story and characterization in this are a huge part of it. It's a much more, I don't know, cerebral than Speed Racer or Astro Boy. So I think
a little bit.
just a little bit more to chew on. And I'm totally in agreement with you that it took me a couple watches, I think, to really be like, okay, I think I got it. Now I'm getting a bit close to the point where I think I could boil it down a bit. I think I could Occam's razor it a bit, but something that, especially on later watches, that I really started appreciating a lot more is how great these characters are. Really, it's only a couple recent watches where I'm like, Kaneda is a funny character.
Yeah.
Even if he's an asshole and he's this like dumb kid that's like, I just saved your life. Come on, let's get a drink. Like that kind of thing too. It's everyone feels fleshed out, even within kind of, not saying that every character is something like right out of Shakespeare or what have you, but everyone feels like they have a goal, that they have a clear personality, and it's not a small cast. Like there's a decent slate of characters in this, and they all feel fleshed out for even the limited screen time that they're in. Even the barkeep when Tetsuo goes, and it's like, hey, oh, you want some pills? Okay, and you can already even gather by that and the first scenes, like rough and tumble guy, that's really nice. And I'm like, that kind of detail, like a lot of animation, even if it's really, really well done, I find that sometimes that can take a back seat besides your Pixars and
Not
your
just animation,
but films in general
movies,
and wide releases of anything. So that's something that upon more rewatches, I've really, really been able to sink my teeth into more.
The writing really does make it feel like these characters were alive before the first frame of the movie, right? Like, it's not very often where you can feel a character and get a sense for who they are before they tell you who they are, or they don't even tell you most of the time in this movie. You just get the sense of who they are. They don't feel like a character dropped into the scene to do their thing.
Sure.
And I think the barkeep is a great example of how well they're fleshed out, even with that short amount of screen time. We see him very briefly at the beginning, and then very briefly again right towards the end. He's alive for 2 seconds in this second scene, and when we see him dead, just
it's a gut punch.
It's a gut punch.
Everybody in the audience
goodness.
was like, oh, no,
And then to see their level of upset to this, like you even after he's dead, you get more of a sense of who he was to them.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. There have been rumors of an adaptation to live action for this film.
Oh, no.
For this film.
No.
You know, I gotta say, I've always loved animation, but this movie really drove it home. It's like there are people that can't take animation. They're like, they can't accept it as like a serious
it's a cartoon.
medium.
Kid
And
stuff.
I've always been able to go, no. I not only get it, but I'm not gonna say I prefer it, but there's something animation does that live action can't do. And but it's like there's something about the texture, like especially near the end of the movie when everything's growing, and if it was CGI, your brain would go, oh, you'd be analyzing it, you'd be judging it. That's pretty good. That's not good. That's pretty good. That looks cool. That doesn't look cool. But in this movie, you just accept it all, and it's incredible.
I would argue that even if they remade it today as an animated movie or an animated series or something, it still wouldn't be as good. I think that a lot of this comes from the passion of the script, the people working on the movie and their ideas and the story that they're trying to tell. And I think that if it were to be remade in any form, it would just be like a love letter to the movie and not trying to tell this like amazing story that they've come up with. So I don't even think it would have the same feeling today. Like
But I mean, okay, is there something animation? Well, I know there is, but it's a trick question. What do you think? Is there something animation can do that live action can't do? Or is there what's the reason to do animation over live action?
I think it's the suspension of disbelief. I think that you immediately buy this new city, this world that's happening just through the visuals. When it is grounded in reality and they try and make it look real, you're analyzing it. Like your brain can't turn that off. Yes. And right from the start of the movie, everything is real.
That's a great point.
There's not a moment where it's not.
Can I quote David Mazzucchelli? He said that the one thing he understands about superheroes is they are the most realistic when they are drawn with ink. Something like that. And I understand what he means. It's like you just said, your brain goes, this is real. they stop your brain stops analyzing it, it just accepts it. But when it's CGI and it's like you go, it looks real kind of, and then that doesn't, and then you're it's like you said, you're judging it, right? Ian, what do you think?
Yeah, the example that I'm going to throw out here is those weird little kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you were to try to do that in CGI or to try to do that in live action, first of all, there's an ambiguity to what you're seeing in the animation, right? Mm-hmm. You see them at first, you're like, oh, that's a little kid. And then you see them a little bit closer, like, is that a little kid? What's going on here? What am I even seeing? It looks like a little kid, but it also looks like an old man.
Right.
I'm not sure which this is. You can draw something that's in between and ambiguous and leaves you guessing, right? Wondering what this is and how this is going to fit into the story. But the second you try and do that in live action, your brain makes a decision as to what you're seeing. Like, oh, that's a kid that's dressed up like an old person makeup.
Yep.
Right. You wouldn't make a Ferrari out of firewood. It just, there's an inherent limitation if you're bringing it into live action because, as you guys have already kind of enunciated, if you have to bring CGI into it, you are then animating it.
Right.
You are making it into animation at that point.
Right.
Now, if we were to say, what would this look as a fully like 3D CGI animated movie? I think that's a different question. But again, I think when you have something where you're looking, you're like, I cannot believe every single window on there is in that skyline is hand drawn. It's you can't compete with that. I think that impact can't be recreated as has been done originally. I think it's borderline, I don't know, sacrilegious is a bit harsh, but I just don't I don't think there's anything to be gained besides, again, a homage.
If you try, you're gonna fuck it up.
Yes.
So don't even try.
There's a reason why
please don't try.
There's a reason why Taika has decided this is on the back burner permanently, and that was while he was in good grace.
Is that who they had tapped for this?
Taika Waititi had signed. Like, I'm pretty sure it was like on ink to paper that he was going to do it.
That at all.
And it kept being pushed back, and now it's basically like dead.
What about Edgar Wright, Ian? Could Edgar Wright do this?
No, I don't think he could.
Okay.
Edgar Wright, he's one of my favorite directors, and I love the way that he does action, and I love the way that he characterizes. But this is not his wheelhouse. If who did Sin City?
Oh, that was Robert Rodriguez.
Okay, something done in that style,
like kind of
more pulpy.
That's almost
Pulpy,
live action rotoscope, kind of.
Yeah, with the style.
that might have a chance. Something along those lines, but
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is too, is that you could make the argument of, okay, well, if Akira's done live action, maybe Toho or whoever will do it in Japan themselves. That's personally like but that's not even like a guarantee it's going to be solid, because, for example, the I don't know if anyone's watched Attack on Titan. The Attack on Titan live action movies, like made in Japan and everything, are not great.
Not great.
It's not an inherent like mark of quality to do that.
Same with like Death Note and things like that. Right. Like it's not.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a non-starter.
Sure.
I think for it to work in any sense, it can't be an adaptation of this movie. I think it needs to be an updated adaptation of the manga, because this came out when the manga was halfway through.
Sure.
So it does have a different ending and there are different aspects to it. And I think it would have to try and be its own thing. I think if we're just doing a remake, why are we deciding to do a remake at this point?
Well,
You know what I mean?
that's
Like,
a great
why
point.
Do you
Especially when we have
remake any
Ghost in the
movies?
Shell. No.
Yeah. It's just like, what's the purpose of doing it?
That goes for
Right?
any remake, but
money is the purpose.
Yeah. And if you can't make it better, then don't do it at all. And I don't think that there's a
money, Josh.
Right. And that's
Well-
it. And it doesn't, if somebody's going to make it, they don't care how it turns out. They just know that they're going to make money off of it.
the thing is about
not worth
animation
it.
is there's something, if this table was drawn, it would be solid green and solid black. And in this movie, the way the light comes through, there's just something about it that, you know, and we've reviewed Batman on this show and Turtles, and like Ninja Turtles is a great example. The 1990 film is a pretty decent adaptation of a comic book and a cartoon, but at the same time you watch it and you go, it should just be a cartoon, right? Like there's something you cannot capture when you have puppets and live action and the lighting, it just doesn't work.
Right, because even like, because I've watched the original, the 90s live action Turtles like since I was young, and even the puppeteering in it, it looks neat.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily look, in my opinion, good.
Right.
Again, it gets that vibe of like, you know what, I might just watch the original cartoon
Might
instead.
as well. Yep.
It's cool. I mean, I'm with you on that 100%.
You know what though? I think the big difference with something like Akira to Ninja Turtles, I almost want to see more Ninja Turtles because it already is this like serialized, like fun poppy thing, and seeing different versions of them makes me happy. Like that makes sense. With this, I feel like
it's done.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like you can't do anything else with it. There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, the protagonist has become a new universe.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So he gets it. He gets it.
Yeah. You're the only one. No. You know, okay, here's the thing. I'm not going to ask anyone what the plot is because we don't know. But no, we kind of know.
Yeah.
But let's talk about. And we never do this on the show because none of the movies we review justify it. But what do you think the themes are? Like, okay, this is filmed in Japan.
Well,
to me,
nuclear warfare, right?
Well, that's what I mean. It's Japan. They were bombed. There's obviously nuclear imagery of like cities getting destroyed. Now they're jumping into the future to 2019, is it?
Yep.
Which is Blade Runner was 2017 or 19?
No, it's 2019 as well.
Wow, so
and keep in mind, I'm sure when you watch, you're like, wow. And they're saying next year there's going to be an Olympics in Tokyo and there's a pandemic going around. Yeah, as if.
As if, yeah, exactly. It wasn't planned. Anyway, but I don't know. Beyond that, okay, let's talk like gangs. I don't know. Do you see anything else in there? Like the government? Oh, Nick wants to jump the gun. Go ahead, Nick. No, it's okay. No.
This one, I'll be honest, kind of just popped in my head. This viewing, the movie's about growing up.
Okay.
The movie's about growing up. The main point of tension, even before Tetsuo's accident, is he feels like he's being little broed by Kaneda and the rest of the biker gang the entire time. When he gets his new level of consciousness or powers or what have you, his first thing he's saying when he sees Kaneda is like, now I don't have to be bossed around by you anymore. And
yet he still tries to boss him around.
Right, exactly. And then especially at the end when he kind of realizes that it's kind of out of his control being able to get, back to what he was before. I don't know. I can't say when during this watch it popped into my head, but it was kind of like, oh, I think this movie is about growing up and becoming an adult.
Sure. Well, even down to the other people that have these powers are children, and they've stayed children their entire lives, and that's why they are old, right? So that's why they're able to kind of use these powers, and growing up and having an ulterior motive for these nuclear powers has consequences, right? So they're studying children with these powers to try and harness this innocence, this kind of like power. So it definitely growing up, this weirdly enough is a coming of age story. It's so it's so strange, but yeah.
See, I took it. This film to me is pro gang, pro motorcycle.
Yep.
Pro violence.
Oh yeah.
Pro terrorism. Yep. That's what I took away.
Oh yeah. No, blowing people's bodies up with your brain powers is cool and encouraged.
Exactly. Ian, what did you take away from it?
There are definitely some religious overtones here too. The fact that Tetsuo, he becomes a messianic sort of a character. And the fact that Akira, that he is being confused for, he's looked at by the populace as being their savior, even though he's responsible for untold destruction. But there's this like he's a lore that he's going to sort of wipe away the old and usher in a new, which ends up happening.
Right. I mean, that moment too. They're on the bridge, and we have this kind of like cult on one side and the military on the other, and in the middle is Tetsuo, and he sees the cult behind him getting fired at, so he puts up the boundaries and then reverses the blast against them. And by killing the military, the entire bridge, like he collapses the bridge on the side of the military, but the whole thing still comes down. You know, it's really, there's so many different moments that are like deeper when you think about it and kind of break it down.
Right. And I think what this movie also works really well as is the kind of subject, almost like the anti-superhero movie like Chronicle or a Brightburn. But I think it works a lot better than those. I mean, Chronicle works just by the way it's kind of doing the found footage thing. But the way that, or Hancock is another one that this one definitely works better as for a multitude of reasons. But that's something I never really noticed until this rewatch too. Like, yeah, it works kind of as an anti superhero movie.
Well, I saw vague allusions to like Miracle Man by Alan Moore, with the way that Kid Miracle Man becomes as powerful as he does and destroys half of London, and then there's echoes of like Dark Phoenix. So this is like an old like trope of like this character becoming all powerful. But I think it's interesting that this motorcycle gang are the characters they decide to just kind of through happenstance mix up with this ongoing scientific experiment that affects the whole fate of the country, maybe even the world. I just think it's a because you mentioned the religious overtones. It kind of, now that you mention it, it reminds me how in the Gospels it's like the apostles of Jesus were just regular people, fishermen, right, and like tax collectors and prostitutes. I don't know if that's what they're going for.
Motorcyclists in the Bible.
Yeah,
Yeah. We didn't have Paul pulling up on a Honda CBR.
Right. So what were you gonna say, Josh?
I'm not sure at this point. I mean, even down to like, he's the only one that wears like a cape. Like he actually has like a superhero feel to him. And like the heroes are the gang members is really fun. And it's also interesting that like Kanata is our hero and like our character that we're kind of following through this journey, and he is kind of a dick at times. Like I think you were saying before, like
he's a little shit through most of the movie. And I think that is intentional because, again, as Michael had mentioned, by having kind of this messianic figure be someone from this biker gang, which even through the lore of just the movie alone is like the lowest for, like no one really gives a shit if these motorcycle gang people live or die. You even hit people in restaurants being like, oh, looking over their shoulder as a bike comes and smushes them.
Where'd our waiter go? Oh shit.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was great.
So having Kaneda be this like this rambunctious little asshole just helps kind of cement that as well too. It kind of like, it's funny, it sounds counterintuitive, but you kind of start rooting for him as that goes along because he's kind of thrust in these extraordinary circumstances. At the end of the day, boils down to he's there to try to save his friend, who no matter how much he hates being little boyed by him, he still feels that almost like older brother kind of duty to kind of go and try to help what's best for him.
And at the end of the day, Tatsuro needs his help.
Yes.
Right? When he's turning into this enormous, horrifying, like, oh, I can't control my powers anymore. Kanata, you have to help me.
Right.
Okay, how about this? One more thing before we wrap up. Let's give a moment of animation that really stuck with us. Besides the ones we've already talked about, I got two in mind, okay? When Tetsuo is being attacked in that little tunnel, there's a point where he uses his powers and he creates a globe of force that you don't see. You only see the effects of it. It smashes through the ceiling and the floor and the walls, but you don't actually see the globe. That was fucking incredible. I'm like, that is so smart. I've never seen it in a movie, in a live action movie with CGI.
You know, I think this is probably the scene that I was going to pick as well.
Okay.
Are you talking about how you can see like a sphere
Yes, that's what I
crushing
mean.
through the walls and crushing through the
Yes,
ceiling?
that's it.
And the walls bow and ceiling
Yes.
bow out in that,
Yes.
but animated perfectly. Like
Yes.
this is a perfect sphere.
It's like, I love that attention to detail, right? It's so cool. Another one I want to point out, there's a scene in the very beginning when the motorcycles are all chasing, and there's a car going through a light or something, but the camera's zoomed in, so you can't really see any, like, it's not going by anything, so you can't see how fast it's going, but you can tell because of the light. The shadow is moving. You can see how fast it's moving. And then the guy, I think, is confused. And then right before the motorcycles whiz by, you can see like the shadows change. And I'm like, that is so smart to just see a car and just see the shadows. And that's the only way you can tell how fast it's moving or what's happening around it. I just thought it was incredible.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any that really stick out? Nick?
It's funny because it's not necessarily a big moment. There's two, and they kind of have the same angle. One is where Kay shoots that guy chasing her in Canada in the sewers, and she has
his
this
face.
and she has this 1,000-yard stare look, and she's like jittery. And then there's another, I'm not sure which specific scene it is, but it's one where Tetsuo is going berserk, and I think it might be when his arm starts going all goopy.
Right.
And the Colonel and Kaori are looking on, and just the faces of horror that they have. You can only draw that. You can you have to find actors that can get that kind of expression is really hard pressed, and that's again another reason why I think this needs to stay as a traditionally animated feature.
I was thinking the same thing. Like even his face when he realizes that he can't control it anymore. Like it's kind of a build up. Like when he puts his hand on the throne and the robotic parts start. And he like covers it up with his cape, and he realizes
Amazing.
like I need the medicine.
Yep.
I need the medicine. I need to like suppress this. It's getting out of control. And
It's
then,
very Universal Monsters.
Yeah, and then he rips himself from the machine,
And there's
he gets
cord
shot.
still stuck to it?
Yeah, it's
Oh.
unbelievable. And then when he gets shot and he's on the ground, his face when he's like leaning over, the audience doesn't see the arm yet, and then
Yeah.
you see the look of like horror on his face, and then he flops out that like fleshy robotic hand that's starting to bubble. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's great. And then so one thing also too that I thought of, for some reason, the military guy, I can't remember his name.
The Colonel. We'll just go with the
Colonel,
Colonel.
Yeah.
So he's talking with probably the scientist in an elevator, and they're standing in the elevator, and we're seeing Tokyo in the background, and they're going down, obviously, for the elevator. The camera is panning up, and we're seeing it's like this weird parallax where like you can see Tokyo like going down, and they're in the foreground, and we can see that like it feels like somebody's holding the camera and panning up. Like I can't wrap my mind around how they did this in 1988. It's
just
crazy.
like the scene where they're driving from Neo Tokyo into Old Tokyo before Tetsuo's accident, and you can see the reflection of Neo Tokyo as they're driving.
Like if that's 100% hand drawn and not like a camera effect,
Sure.
I can't think of like how you would even process
Right.
Animating like 3 different shots essentially at once and having it work.
I know that Disney had like...
But that was for they developed it for Beauty and the Beast in 94.
No, but I know that Pinocchio had planes where they would shoot through like planes to create 3D. So it's possible that maybe, and I don't know about that scene, but there was a scene where they're in a helicopter and they're looking through the helicopter, and you can see through the window things moving. And I'm assuming that's what it was. 2 different planes, right?
Looks like $1 million.
Right.
Oh my god!
Right.
Yeah.
And it's literally just a shot of a guy sitting and looking out of a helicopter,
incredible,
and it
though.
makes you go, "Holy shit!" Oh my god!
Ian, do you have anything in mind?
Yeah, the one scene that really stuck into my head, it was when he was first taken to the hospital, I think, and he wakes up, and I don't know if he's actually awake or not, but his reality starts to break apart.
Okay.
And things just start to crumble away.
Oh yes.
Yep.
And there's one
Amazing.
part in particular where he's standing off to the side on the frame, and there's a very long shadow of his legs coming off this way, and everything stays together except his shadow starts to break apart
I didn't
towards
notice
him.
that. Wow.
And it gives this sense of like,
I have to watch it again. Yeah.
it gives a sense that this is him falling apart.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, but you just triggered another one. Can I mention another
Absolutely.
one?
Yeah, of course.
Please.
Talk about sound design. When the earth cracks open and there's no sound, then his guts fall out of his stomach,
And
and then there's no guts, but he's picking them up like this. That's incredible.
the
It's
entire
perfect that you
room.
know it's in his head.
Yes.
The entire room here when that happened,
Was
you heard a collective.
Exactly. That was
Yeah.
incredible. And that's what I mean. This is 1988. How long is that? How long ago was that? I can't do math.
Long
It doesn't
time
matter.
ago, yeah.
It
Long
was,
time
it was
ago.
80 years ago. But the point is that even now, if I saw that in a theater today, it would shock me.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the sound design itself is so unorthodox. Like we talked about before we rolled, going up into space and there's no sound. Well, that's how it would be, but nobody does that.
Right.
So when you see it in a movie, it's like shocking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because as a whole, maybe it's because I've watched this so many times, I completely forget until, watching it. This is the biggest audience I've watched it with. Usually it's just like a couple other people. I forgot just how grisly this movie is.
Yes.
It's insane.
Yes.
It reminded me of the first time I watched The Exorcist was actually this year.
Sure, wow.
And I'm thinking like, okay, well, we'll see how it holds up. And I'm there. I'm like 2024. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
This is fucking getting under my skin.
Yeah.
And it's just as effective like this. Just aged like fine
Fine wine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You got me thinking of that scene in the sewer again, where Kay shoots that guy.
Yep.
And
It's his face.
just, half his face is gone, and he's just slumped.
His eyes are wide.
And you see him slowly sliding down, like.
And then talk about the sound design too. Like you can hear him like gargling on his blood. Like
But at the same time, the characters stay true to themselves, because Kanata, in the next scene, when they're running away, Kay is freaking out. And he's like, is this your first time killing somebody? Well, we'll just hook up when you get out of jail. You want to go for drinks when you're out of jail?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we could probably talk about every scene in the movie in detail. We could probably analyze. I was actually thinking we should just do a frame by frame. I don't know if you guys know, like Roger Ebert used to do this thing where he would analyze movies shot by shot. So maybe one day we'll start a new podcast called Shot by Shot, and we'll
Great.
revisit.
All right.
Akira will watch all 3 dubs, or the 2 dubs and the subtitles. Okay.
Right.
Three
Well, I
different
mean, we
episodes.
can watch all 3 at the same time. One dub in this year,
Yes,
one dub
yeah.
in this year,
Okay.
and then we
we'll
watch the
read-
subtitles.
Yes, there you go. There you
and
go.
then one with no subtitles in Japanese.
in Japanese, and we'll learn
And then we
Japanese
just,
for
and we
that
just
episode.
nod knowingly
Yes,
the entire
there you
time,
go.
which did happen actually when I was in Japan the last summer, and Boy and the Heron was in theaters, and I stepped in knowing full well I just resolved that I wouldn't look
Wow.
at any synopsis. I'll wait till it was subbed there, and I came out. I'm like, well, it was pretty for sure. It was pretty for sure.
Nice. Okay, so there you go. That's one of the best movies we've ever reviewed, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much competition, but yeah, it's
I don't know,
definitely.
Phantom Menace.
For me,
That's
true.
I
I
think I've
Yeah.
gone 2 for 2. Hopefully, Attack of the Clones doesn't make an appearance, and then
Yeah.
we'll be just fine.
Speaking of Attack of the Clones, guess what we're going to review in our next episode of Laser Brains?
excited.
That's right. Attack of the Clones. Be sure to join us for that. Be sure to join us for what's the other podcast we do?
Tape Crusaders.
Yeah, Tape Crusaders, and the next episode is going to be
I don't know at
Darkman.
this point.
Darkman.
Yeah, we're so
I
out of
think-
order
Yeah, we're
that-
completely out of order, but I think it's going to be Darkman.
Maybe by the time this comes out, Darkman's already out too. I'm
It
not
might
sure.
be already out. Yeah, be sure to watch Darkman.
We got lots of
it's
stuff.
still available on YouTube somewhere. Just check
remember,
it out.
just get the elephant.
Take the fucking elephant.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we want to thank Nick for joining us again. You're our favorite
Thanks, Nick.
guest we've
Yeah.
ever had on the
Aw.
show.
Thank you.
admit
It's always a
Huh?
pleasure.
Yeah.
to
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's true. And we want to thank Champion for hosting Movie Night Uniplex.
Hear, hear.
What is it called? Meteor Uniplex.
That's exactly what it's called. Yes.
Every Wednesday at Meteor.
And thanks for
Visit
coming
different-
every Wednesday.
That's
I'd be here.
right.
Otherwise, I'd be here by myself. and I'd be scared watching all these people get shot.
That's true. Yeah.
And this is really good because my mom doesn't let me watch R-rated movies, so this is one we're gonna have to keep on the down low.
I won't tell her.
Okay, Josh, you can tell them where to find our stuff.
Yeah, you can also find all of our stuff over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. All of our podcasts are video format now, so check them out on our YouTube channel as well. Let us know what you guys think about the stuff we're talking about, things we're looking at. Akira, what do you guys think?
All right, till the next time, see you later.